It's obviously penguin, unless it's a falcon. Why are there so many birds?
I'm going to use that one from now on.
Alfred!
What is up, DC fans? Welcome back to the channel. This is my spoiler-heavy review for the Batman. We're talking all things spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, you should probably go see it. It's out in theaters now. That's why we are doing this video at this point. But I need all y'all in the comments down below. Leave your thoughts, spoiler-heavy details on how this movie plays out, that crazy cameo at the end, and we'll talk about it. And what was your favorite moment of this movie? We have a giveaway winner. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video, but I want to start out talking all things spoilers.
Alfred!
My dog got so concerned. I hear him barking up. It's okay, buddy. We're good. I don't want to put on the mask. My head is oddly shaped, but I do want to talk about kind of my anticipation level going into this movie. Obviously, I was so excited. I've been defending Robert Pattinson for quite some time, even though I had no clue how he was going to be as the character. I just knew he would put forth a lot of effort into this role. And then you have Matt Reeves, a great filmmaker, just went back and watched the final two Planet of the Apes movies that he directed. They're just amazing. I love that trilogy. One of my favorites of all time. But how is he going to handle someone like the Batman? Is he going to bring a very artistic point of view and perspective to it, or is it another generic studio superhero movie? Well, I'm happy to say it definitely wasn't generic, and it definitely wasn't another run-of-the-mill superhero movie. Now, Matt Reeves' style, I don't know if everyone's going to like the approach, the way that he handles this character, because this version of Batman is a very different version compared to all of the interpretations we've seen. May I say, the most different version of Batman, especially when you look at taking off the mask, becoming Bruce Wayne. We've never seen a Bruce Wayne like this. Now, I've seen this version of Bruce Wayne in the comics, not the more standard comic book runs, but this version of Bruce Wayne has made an appearance, if you will, very dark to himself, this gothic, almost, people have been saying, emo, Bully Maguire, that interpretation of the character. It does, in its own crazy way, feel more like Batman, but less like Batman or Bruce Wayne than we've seen before. So to find that balance once the movie starts is a very difficult one. And we'll get into that more so a bit later into this review. But I want to start at the main beginning of this movie, the voiceover, which I got a little concerned about. I'm like, I don't want this whole movie to be a voiceover. Let's refrain from doing that the entire time. And they did, which was great. But I thought using it every now and then was the perfect way to do it, and we see just a tad bit later, a couple of scenes later, Batman logging every single thing he sees, not only writing it down, but through his technology. One of the coolest Batman gadgets I've ever seen in any movie. I think we've seen a variation of this in the comics before, but something to actually capture his memories, his moments, and especially when you have a villain like the Riddler. It's kind of crazy he had this technology because it's perfect for the Riddler. You have to see every clue, detail, memorize that, and keep it locked in your brain. But now he has the capability to do that, go back and reference it, and see these clues as they progress. He and Alfred, trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and Commissioner Gordon, I guess. One of my favorite moments from when they're doing that is, and I know I'm going all over the place, but finding the thumb drive, and he's just like, wow. And those are those very small and subtle moments of humor. They're not really present in this film, but when they are injected, they work extremely well, like cheeky moments of humor. And I'm okay with this being a way darker and way more gritty version of this world, this universe, and this character, because that's the tone that Reeves set at the beginning. Batman says, I am the shadows, and criminals, they fear me even when I'm not there, because they are looking to the shadows, thinking I am there, and thus maybe they won't act on what they're about to do. Or, like we see one case of, maybe they get so scared, they get hit by a car, or something happens to them. Just desserts, or
Justice!
that's a bad cape twirl.
Yes!
I don't have any room here.
I'm going into my cave. The Bat Cave!
But an incredible opening showcasing who this character is, how he's feared in Gotham. This is year 2, not year 1, but I want to go back just a little bit and start with our actual introduction. They swerved me. It was a swerve, that's the way to say it. I thought they were going to show the death, once again, of Thomas and Martha Wayne, because that's what it looked like. Somebody looking through these binoculars type thing. Yeah, Okay, they're doing it again, but they didn't do it again. And I love how, whether it be the Spider-Man movies or the Batman movies, it's like the most obvious thing to do, but we know what happened. We've seen it 1,000 times. Now, Bruce is still reeling from that, and we get a lot of Thomas and Martha Wayne a bit later on in the film, and we'll get to that. But at the beginning here, we see Riddler basically just embodying the Zodiac Killer, taking this carpet tool. And just like Bruce, I had no clue this was a carpet tool. Not a piece of me understood that. Now, it did feel a little bit lucky that there was a person in the room at the end of the film whose dad was a carpenter. Oh, that's what that is. Because if Batman never would have put that together, well, I guess it wouldn't have mattered because it happened anyway. But he never would have been able to know how drastic the implications were. And Riddler's plan, it actually kind of executed in the way he wanted it to. Not fully, obviously, but for the most part, up until we get to that ending. I know I'm skipping ahead. The carpet tool is a pretty big deal, and we see Riddler get extremely violent with that person. He is a serial killer in this movie. And obviously with the character of the Riddler, we know him to be one thing, and in a way he was that thing in this film. Very over the top, very eccentric, almost too eccentric at times. I heard a lot of people in a couple of my screenings say, well, he's just an off-brand Joker, and I don't think that is the case because Riddler is such a strategic character in this movie. Everything he does, there are intentions behind it. And however you feel about Heath Ledger's Joker, even though it felt calculated, nothing was calculated in that movie. And pretty much every version we've seen of the Joker, it's all part of the plan. That's how most villains operate, but not the Joker, right? So the Riddler being strategic, the Joker being sporadic, I don't think the Riddler was an off-brand version of the Joker because he calculated and operated so differently in this movie than what we've seen before. And I appreciate and respect that because that's what the Riddler is in the comics. Now, he's not as brutal in the comics as maybe he is in this movie. And at times I felt they could have went a step further and made this an R-rated film. Why would they? Because I guess technically they didn't need to. But man, oh man, those scenes with the Riddler, whether it be that first scene, just beating that man to a pulp, or the second scene in the car where he knocks the guy out, straps the bomb to him, and that beautiful wide shot showing the lights of the car. We'll get into the cinematography, but he is a very violent individual, even though there is not one physical interaction between he and Batman, because Batman probably would beat him to a pulp. Also, I guess we can just stay on the Riddler at this point. Paul Dano plays him brilliantly, by the way, but I love the fact that they're playing on the 2020s, 2010s type personality, setting up a social media account, having these crazy followers, and his intentions, like you understand the corrupt nature of those in Gotham. You're not on board with the way that Riddler is executing it, even though he's going after the rat and trying to lift that corruption from Gotham, and they give him a backstory, and he's an orphan. He's not like Bruce Wayne, the billionaire who had everything handed to him on a silver platter. He had to actually live and grow up in those orphanages where he said that the babies would get so cold they would die, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, that really is a tragic backstory, and I like the fact that they gave him that, and there's a sense that they're trying to get you to kind of pull for him in this own crazy way, but not necessarily more so pull for what he's doing. It's just the way he goes about it is super corrupt, super unhinged, and that's the character of the Riddler in this movie. And again, when we get that reveal of Paul Dano, he just kind of looks like a psychopath, but going beyond that, seeing the video, talking to his followers, and it makes all the sense in the world that his followers would be so obsessed with this. At first I was saying, oh, only 500, but 500 obsessed and crazed people that would do this, knowing the type of gun to take, knowing the type of element to buy to build a bomb, all of these things. It feels as realistic as anything we've ever seen from a villain. Even in The Dark Knight, right, when the Joker takes over the boats and he has the bombs on both of them, that feels realistic, but it almost feels too far-fetched compared to what the Riddler does in this film. This feels much more attainable and much more horrifying in its own weird way. I'm not saying the Riddler's better than the Joker. You saw my villains tier list, but it feels more realistic. But yeah, the clues, those various things, the thumb drive, bringing him into the light, reading that, and then seeing the movie for the second time, planting those seeds along the way. I just really love the way that they handled and executed that. But the next major thing that we get, apart from the introduction, is the first interaction between Batman and Alfred. That's the relationship that I want to talk about right now. I really loved Andy Serkis in the role, and I love the arc that Bruce Wayne has with this character who raised him, trained him, and they play Alfred more like the person in charge of everything. Alfred has a butler. That's what it looks and feels like. Alfred himself has a butler, even though he is the butler. Right, we saw in the Dark Knight trilogy and various incarnations, and we don't really know if the League of Shadows exists. I'm going to assume it does, but Batman also received training, and that's clear as day in this movie from Serkis's version of Alfred. They hit on it a couple of times in that relationship. It's really sad because, you know, Bruce Wayne continues to like, you're not my father. Why do you have my dad's cufflinks that say Wayne on them? Like all of these various things. And then at the end, when I was convinced Alfred was dead, because this is an origin movie that's going in a bit of a different direction, and I thought maybe Matt Reeves could do something so out of the blue and so different, aka killing Alfred, that yeah, they could blow him up and kill him. So that moment really impacted me, really got me, but as we learn that Alfred is still alive and they have that moment together, what a beautiful moment that was between our two characters. Just the smile on Serkis's face, but that's the first time we really see Bruce Wayne open up, and that's one of the first times we really see Bruce Wayne. We don't see a lot of Bruce Wayne in this movie, and I've seen a lot of complaints that Robert Pattinson is not a good Bruce Wayne in this film. I'm on the other side of that. I think he is a good Bruce Wayne. I just think it's a very different version of Bruce Wayne. He's not the big, what does Robert Downey Jr. say, genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist that we've seen before. He's a different version. A version that doesn't really want to come out. We see him put sunglasses on when he sees the light in the daytime. The movie itself, there is rarely a scene in the daytime. I believe only one or two. But when he comes out of that darkness, not wearing the eye makeup, because we see him in the first hour with the eye makeup, but we don't see him without the eye makeup until 55 minutes into the film, I calculated. And yes, it's a different version. If you're not fond of this version, I absolutely understand. But one thing I love about this movie, okay, and one thing that has always been present in the lore of the Batman is the fact that Bruce Wayne is most comfortable when he is wearing the mask. That's when he feels like he can come alive. I think there's a reason why Bruce Wayne whispered more so than Batman whispered in this movie. Go back, watch the movie, pay attention. That's not me telling you to do that. I mean, unless you want to. You should do it. Go do it. Alfred! The first time I watched the movie, I'm like, why is Bruce Wayne doing the whispering? And Batman is using his more intense voice. Granted, he has to do it. He's the Batman, right? But it's interesting how they play it. It's almost like Bruce Wayne is the mask, and Batman is who he actually is. And that's something that I've always felt from my favorite iterations of Batman, but I've never actually seen it in a movie. I love Ben Affleck as Batman. I'm a sucker for Christian Bale as Batman. But this is the first time I've ever seen Batman come alive when the mask is on, in a way that separates itself so distinctly from Bruce Wayne, who is kind of this like enclosed, almost claustrophobic. I don't want to come outside. I don't want to really do anything. I'm not happy. I'm not content. I'm not even trying to be this outgoing billionaire. And that's a great version of Bruce Wayne. We've seen it countless times, and it's worked countless times. But I like this new version because it's different. It separates itself from what we've seen before, which is what people are always complaining about until we get it. And then people are like, I want the same thing. No. I like that we're getting something new. I appreciate the fact that this is distinct and different. Now, you don't have to like this version. That's fine. But the fact that it's trying to do something new is great. And representing that Batman is himself when he is Batman is what I've always wanted to see from Batman. Batman. We'll get back to the characters here in just a second. Let's talk about some of the technical elements of this movie. Love that they utilized something in the way we heard that in the first trailer. I'm so glad that they brought it back in this movie and used it multiple times. It works its way into Giacchino's score, which I am settled on. This is my favorite Batman score. Everything from the introduction, I am the shadows at the beginning, hearing the music kick in when the criminals look up and see that signal in the sky. It's not just a call, it's a warning. That was incredible, but Also weaving it within the chase sequences and the action sequences, going into Riddler's theme, which is so distinctly different from Batman's theme. Catwoman, which utilizes a bit of jazz in there and plays it more smooth, and all of these variations. When we go into the crime world, whether it be Falcone or the Penguin coming on screen, it changes. I mean, I think the score is incredible. It is technically the best part of the movie, but the cinematography comes so close. Greg Fraser, what he's able to do with the framing and the shot selection, you know, it doesn't have to be your favorite Batman film. I don't even know if it's my favorite Batman film, but the look of this movie, even though it's dark, the funniest criticism I saw, this movie's too dark. This Batman movie about a man who dresses like a bat and comes out at night in the shadows is too dark. I can accept any other criticism. If you tell me this movie's too dark, I'm not going to take you seriously. I'm just not. But every now and then there's a hint of color that comes out on screen, whether it be the red reds or the blue blues, and anytime we get that, it felt like my favorite blockbusters ever, you know, Logan, Mad Max Fury Road. When we get that color, it either fills up the screen or it is the focal point. It draws your eye, and it's so beautifully done. I mentioned the scene where Riddler straps the man's neck, and you just see those two lights flashing on and off when we get that beautiful wide shot. Of course, when Batman's carrying the torch at the end, it's not a torch, but you know what I mean, that beautiful red that fills up the screen and everyone in Gotham kind of following him. When it fills up blue, when he, you know, puts the bomb and the smoke comes out at the end during that fight scene, there's a little hint of blue there that I think just looks so incredible and brings out so much from what could have just been a gray, very white, black looking scene that would not have been near as creative. Now, it does get dark, because it's a Batman movie, but when it does get dark, there are still moments where you can see what you're supposed to see, and it works, right? It just works so well as this neo-noir, I say neo because there are a couple of scenes like that, noir detective mystery thriller, and you can say what you will about the movie copying Seven. All movies copy other movies. This is something else I want to talk about. I know there are easy Seven comparisons, and I made those comparisons in my review, but it's a similar case to what I've seen criticisms about other comic book movies before. I don't think it's a bad thing when movies, I don't want to say copy, but take cues from other films that have worked so well in the past, because we see it over and over again, movies trying to recreate other great movies, and they don't do a good job. But when a film successfully does it, like Batman successfully takes elements of Seven, it turns into a criticism. It turns into, oh, Batman's just ripping off Seven because he can't do anything else. Yeah. There's a 7-minute compilation of scenes where Quentin Tarantino takes literal beautifully done, by the way. He's one of my favorite directors. Copies of scenes that have been done countless times before. There were 9 or 10 examples in Inglourious Bastards where he recreates the exact framing of that scene, but instead of seeing it as a criticism, people see it as a glorious, oh my God, Tarantino's a genius. But by God, Matt Reeves takes some elements of Seven, and Jesus Christ, it's a tragedy. I just don't get it as a criticism. I don't get it. It's okay if you want to make that comparison. There are clear comparisons, but all artists copy other artists. That's just the way it goes. Whether it be graphic design, making movies, me making my YouTube video reviews. I mean, people always used to tell me, Austin, Jeremy Jahns and Chris Stuckman, they're doing it, you're copying them. And I'm like, no, I'm just taking what they did and trying to make it my own. Isn't that what Matt Reeves is doing with the Batman? Am I crazy? Do I sound crap? Probably. I don't give a crap.
He's unhinged. Get him out of here.
Justice.
That's better. Let's talk about Catwoman. Zoe Kravitz is amazing in this movie. She really is, like, just down to her movements. I noticed in the scene where they're on top of the building and you have that beautiful skyline in the background. Dear God, it's amazing to look at. The color grading is phenomenal. But she's like putting one foot strategically in front of another, and I'm like, who else did that? Oh, yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer did that with her version of Catwoman, and it's awesome, man. She walks like Catwoman. She talks like Catwoman. Her movements, her essence. She was so good in this movie. I feel like I didn't do her justice in my review. I didn't talk about her enough, but her chemistry with Robert Pattinson is what makes this film go. From top to bottom, everything about the way that they interact just works so well, and I loved seeing how Catwoman would play with the Batman's emotions and look deep into his soul, even though at one point she even talks about Bruce Wayne right in front of him, doesn't know he's Bruce Wayne, but she can see the way that he sees the world and vice versa. And that first scene when Batman is watching Selina Kyle, looking a little bit longer. I love the sexual tension, the sexual chemistry. People want to be like, oh, why does that need to be in a Batman movie? Well, they did in Batman Returns, and I didn't see a lot of people. Well, I guess I saw some complaints, but I didn't see a ton of people complaining about that. And that's always been the relationship between Batman and Catwoman, so the fact that it's there is great. But the story with what looks to be her girlfriend, I know she really doesn't acknowledge that. She says friend, but that storyline, I didn't think it would go as far as it ended up going when they come back to the apartment complex after they break in, when Selina is trying to get what she needs. They come back and she's gone. She is kidnapped. At that point, I'm thinking, okay, clearly it had to be one of the crime bosses, but I was convinced it was Penguin. I knew Falcone would be involved in a way, but I wasn't entirely sure if he was El Rata. What is it?
Rata Lata. A rat with wings. It's obviously Penguin, unless it's a falcon. Why, there's so many birds.
I'm going to use that one from now on.
Alfred.
But that's all Catwoman's concerned about when she goes undercover for Batman there, using his incredible technology. He's wanting her to figure out, okay, who is in this nightclub? Pretty much every notable person in Gotham, including Coulson. Not Agent Coulson from Marvel. This version of Coulson. It's a different Coulson. It's just the same name. Why am I confusing you? But she's trying to get what she wants while Batman's trying to get what he wants, and they're using each other, but at the same time, there's a mutual respect there because they both dress like animals and run around Gotham. But I really appreciated those types of scenes going into the nightclub when Batman goes into the nightclub, just beats up the twins, beats up everyone on his way. I've heard tale that the action scenes in this movie aren't the best. I really enjoyed the action scenes. I thought they were staged extremely well. The choreography was fun to watch, and you can actually see what is happening. There aren't as many, and I saw some people say, well, I want more action in my Batman movie. That's a valid complaint, a valid criticism. I like the detective aspect being at the forefront of this film, but that scene specifically with the neon lights in the background and hearing the music bumping and Penguin going, whoa, just take it easy. Well, hey, Penguin, hey. Super fun scene. I love seeing Penguin. That's the first time he sees Selina Kyle. And then the first time that we see Falcone, man, I'm like, Falcone. Some people say Falcone in this movie. I think they said Falcone, but I may be remembering that. It goes both ways, to be honest with you. Now, Maroni also has a presence, and you see that for the very first time in the opening when you see that framed newspaper cutout on the wall where everyone took down. They came together and they took down Maroni. Falcone had a big part in that. But Falcone being
Rata-lata.
I keep forgetting it, but that's who he is. He's the rat with wings. He's the rat. Falcone is the rat, but what looks to be like, okay, everybody's kind of working together and we're all trying to take advantage of Gotham. We see a little bit later on that the fund from Thomas and Martha Wayne, well, they're taking that fund, they're picking out of that fund, and they're kind of using it to pay people off. And it's an entire establishment of corruption. Now we see at the point when they bring out Falcone that not everyone in Gotham is corrupt. Okay, there are indeed good people. I think the mayor, the now mayor, she's trying to do good. Obviously Gordon is a great character. We'll talk about him, but Falcone is the one that people are working for. He's kind of the leader. We also find out that he most likely killed Bruce Wayne's father, or had him killed. Now, that's something that is huge for Bruce's character when he comes to terms with that after that conversation with Alfred, and instead of trying to do what Selina attempts to do, he essentially just handcuffs him and takes him out to be arrested. He could have easily killed him, but he said, you know what, I'm going to be the bigger person. And that's the first time in this movie where he overcame being vengeance. He wasn't as much vengeance. Now, that obviously comes back out of him in that third act huge battle that we'll talk about, but I really did love seeing Batman kind of turn a corner there with his character. Maybe that's not what I need to be. Maybe I need to be more of a beacon of hope. So instead of killing this man who had my father killed, I'm going to take him in. And that's a big part of what Bruce's arc is in this movie. He's a very different character at the end than he is at the beginning, and I'm sure if we see Bruce Wayne again in the second film, he will be more of what we know as Bruce Wayne. It's just coming to terms with that is taking a lot longer than what we've seen in other films. But that was a great moment. I think the character of Falcone is great. We'll talk about Gordon, but I also want to talk about the Penguin. From the accent to Colin Farrell, completely disappearing behind the makeup and the prosthetics, man. It was incredible to see. And when Falcone gets taken out at the end there, man, oh man, it looks like he's fully embracing and accepting the role as a crime boss, looking out the window over Gotham at the end. I think this is the Penguin that we know and love. I'm excited to see his spin-off series, whether that's modern day or a prequel, but I think he is a phenomenal character. Absolutely. Also, you can't forget about the car chase. I love the fact that they're going against traffic. That's a great moment. Opening up the car, seeing the dead body there, Catwoman's reaction was great. And she goes and gets the man that she feels is responsible. And thus, from that comes the recording that is played over the news. So whether Falcone escaped or not, his career, well, I mean, he could pay people off, but his career was coming to an end at that point. But starting up the Batmobile for the first time, I implore you, I encourage you, I felt it my first press screening, but when I watched it in IMAX, man, the seats were rumbling. The theater was going crazy. You hear it. You see it. Another great example of lighting, seeing the flame come out of the back of the Batmobile, man. Awesome, awesome moment. Starting up that Batmobile was freaking phenomenal. It was incredible. Maybe one of my favorite moments in the entire movie. And this version of this muscle car version of the Batmobile is fantastic. I loved that moment. Commissioner Gordon, a great character. Like I said in my review, the best dynamic I've ever seen in live action between Commissioner Gordon and Batman. They're always together. Like, we will cut to them and they'll just be walking. Like when they find the thumb drive, or when they're investigating the dead body, and we always get those notes to the Batman, to the Batman, to the Batman. Well, Commissioner Gordon is like his sidekick in this movie. He doesn't need a Robin in this film because he has Commissioner Gordon. There's that mutual trust there when they're in the police precinct and Batman has to find a way to escape. He says, "Punch me." Didn't pull my punch. That's what he tells him a little bit later on, but he gives him the exact way to escape, gives him the key. That's when we see Batman in the wingsuit. That's also a great example of Batman still coming into his own. There's a little bit of a fear of heights in that scene, but we also see him epic fail on his way down. He kind of face plants and rolls around a little bit, so he's not fully there yet in terms of what we know to be the Batman. It's only year 2, but again, that relationship with Gordon, man, it is awesome. Like, man, oh man, Jeffrey Wright, he's not going to get the credit he deserves. He's one of the best parts of the movie, but in terms of looking at the overarching riddle and what they're trying to solve, this was something I did question my first time around, like, how is it so difficult to come to the conclusion of who the rat actually was? Now that I watched again, I understand. It does make a bit more sense to me. But also, the involvement of the Waynes and the Arkhams. By the way, during that little montage, we see Thomas Wayne trying to become mayor. There is a nice Easter egg for the character of Hush. Clearly, this story is playing off of the Long Halloween, and Hush comes up on screen with a question mark. Riddler is almost essentially playing a version of Hush in this movie combined with the Riddler, so that was super cool. But Batman keeps getting the cards. The riddles are intense. They are interesting. The final culmination of the plan. They capture Riddler. Clearly, he wanted to be captured. They have that very similar conversation, another interrogation scene between Batman and his villain. I didn't mind it. I think the fact that we're playing on these things and seeing things we've seen in other Batman movies, you know, even when Riddler gets on screen and he's recording himself, we've seen it from Heath Ledger's Joker, we've seen it from Jack Nicholson's Joker, a different version, obviously, but I don't mind it because it feels like something that character would do. Now, I was convinced he knew that Bruce Wayne was Batman and Batman was Bruce Wayne. I think we all were, right? I've yet to see one person that didn't think that was the case. Now, one of the people that I watched the movie with my second time said to me, I still think he knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and it made for an interesting conversation. I personally don't think he knows Bruce Wayne is Batman. I believe that he just convinced himself that he could get Batman to work with him. Of course, opposing that at first, but when he brings Falcone into the light, he's like, oh, he obviously brought me into the light, and we could make for a great team. You're here now. Stick it out with me. All these bombs are going to go off. The water's going to come into the city, flooding everything in the process. You are now my partner. You are now my friend. Now, someone else is his friend at the end of the movie. But he's also talking about Bruce Wayne over and over. But for me, him repeating Bruce Wayne, Batman clearly thinks he's talking about him. No. The repetitive nature of him saying that over and over is more so him saying, we didn't get him. Right? We got all of these other corrupt people, the pigs, the ones that have taken advantage of Gotham, this and that, yada, yada, yada. We didn't get Bruce Wayne. We got his butler, and I thought his butler was dead. Clearly he's not going to be dead. But we didn't get Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, you know, he's got the silver spoon, and he's growing up a billionaire orphan. He didn't have it hard. I had it hard. Bruce Wayne. And that's someone who is a little bit deranged. He's going to repeat something like that over and over. So they got close to making me think that Riddler believes that Batman is Bruce Wayne is Batman. But we have that realization, that close-up of Batman's eyes when he realizes, no, he doesn't know who I am. He has no clue. He just thinks that that's the guy that we didn't get. So that's kind of my interpretation of that. And then, of course, you have the giant ending where everyone goes into essentially the Madison Square Garden of Gotham City. The water's rushing in, but you also have everyone who's been listening to Riddler's live streams dress up like the Riddler. I love the video when he's like, hey guys, here's what we're going to do. And man, they're going to start shooting at people, especially when it comes to the new mayor of Gotham. They want to kill the mayor. They want to kill all of the people that are corrupt. They know there's a lot of police officers that... They want to kill the mayor. They want to kill everyone that's corrupt. They know there's going to be a lot of police officers in there. Batman comes in. First of all, his entrance was incredible. Like, the big explosion, him coming in. I'm not going to say it's the best action scene I've ever seen in a Batman film. And part of me believes that the studio wanted this big, grand thing to happen at the end. I personally believe the culmination of Falcone was a little bit more emotionally impactful. But what worked for me so well about this ending the second time around was when the criminal looks at Batman and says, I'm vengeance. And Batman has that look on his face because he just injected himself. And I guess, is that like the world's craziest EpiPen? I saw a theory online. Somebody's like, is that the venom that Batman invented to make himself feel a lot stronger? Is that what Bane gets eventually? I'm like, yeah, I guess so. But part of me just believes maybe it was just like an EpiPen. And he even had a little slot for us. I'm like, yeah, it's a crazy EpiPen. But this random crook just looks at Batman and says, I'm vengeance. And that, for me, the second time watching, it made the entire third act feel so much more like, oh, this is just a great culmination of Batman's arc, because he realizes that he doesn't need to be vengeance all of the time. I mean, they refer to him as vengeance all throughout this movie. Maybe he needs to be a beacon of hope. Maybe he needs to be more like a savior. And we're starting to get into Superman territory, and I don't mean savior to be blasphemous. I just mean he's trying to help people much more so here than he is trying to beat the crap out of the criminals, if that makes sense. And that's why he makes the decision to cut that power line, go down, and lead everyone out of this situation. And we see so many moments where he's helping people and trying to assist them, and I think the whole city is coming more to terms with who Batman is now. And watching it for the second time, I still have my issues. It's a little quick. It's a little bigger than the first two acts, and I like the simplicity a bit more. But it works so much better because I found it as more of a culmination of Batman's arc, Bruce Wayne's arc. And it makes me feel like he's going to be a different Bruce Wayne and a different Batman in the next movie. And I love that. We often don't get character depth like that for a main character who is static, the Batman, the whole movie. He's still the Batman, but now he's a bit of a different Batman, and I love that. That's a very, it's an interesting thing to throw into this film. Obviously, there's a huge moment at the end. We'll talk about Barry Keoghan's character here in just a second. Catwoman goes off into the sunset. Penguin is now kind of the new Falcone-ish character, and Batman himself has a lot to digest, and we get another voiceover, which I thought was the perfect moment to bring that back. But first, we did a little giveaway. In the spoiler-free review, I got my wife to randomly select the winner, and funny enough, this was not planned, she selected Bruce Wayne. That's his YouTube name. He even says it. He's like, listen, this is who I am. Here I am. Hey, thank you, Bruce Wayne, for liking and commenting and all of those wonderful things, man. I will be sending this pop figure your way. I've already notified you. To everyone that supported my spoiler-free review, thank you so much. If you'd like to support this video and really the channel in general, thumbs up would be awesome. A comment would be amazing. That's how YouTube, the analytics roll. But I just appreciate you being here and for watching. But hey, this pop figure is coming your way. I hate to depart with it. Maybe I have another one, though. So yes, my boy Barry. Somebody in a live stream, they were like, come on, Austin, you really believe he's not going to be, what was his name, Stanley Merkel or random police officer number 7 like they're telling us he's going to be? And I said, no, I think he's going to be either the Mad Hatter or the Joker. I've been saying that for 9 months now. And guess what? He's the Joker. And funny enough, he's the one that says, riddle me this. And Riddler gets the riddle right off the bat. All Joker needs is a friend. All Joker needs is someone to help him pull off whatever he's got planned in here. Now, part of me hopes to not see the Joker in the second film. Maybe shades of him. A couple of things here and there at Arkham. Get a little more detailed on that makeup and show us what he actually looks like. I think they'll absolutely do that. But I would like to see another villain. I'm actually working on a video, my top 5 voices of a villain in the next movie, but we are going to see him eventually. I love him as an actor. My favorite roles of his include American Animals. The Killing of the Sacred Deer is the film I look at and I say, yeah, he could do it. He could play the Joker, right? Not as much Eternals. He's a very different character in Eternals, but The Killing of a Sacred Deer, man, I feel like he could be that unhinged, crazy character. I feel like a more comic booky version of the character, not as grounded, not as Heath Ledger or even a Joaquin Phoenix, because those are 2 grounded versions of the character. And it's funny because this is the most grounded world. This is the most grounded version of Gotham. Maybe my favorite version of Gotham we've ever seen. But a less grounded Joker to maybe make things feel off and just unbalanced enough to kind of make things feel off in a good way, because that's what you want from the Joker, right? You want him to make you feel uncomfortable. And I will say I was kind of hesitant about the laugh at first. I'm like, oh, that's not as... But then I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I mean, it is making me feel uncomfortable. I guess that's what the Joker does, and he did a good job of that. So I'm like, yeah, there are definitely some things that he will work on with the character, but I'm ready, man. I'm ready to see Barry take on the Joker. Again, if you don't know who he is, I think Killing of a Sacred Deer, American Animals, those are my favorite 2 roles of his. He was good in Eternals. I've always been a huge fan of what he brings in any role he plays, so I think he can crush it. Jury's still out. We don't know enough, but we can see a little bit that's kind of like his smile was pulled a little bit. Some people are saying, is it really the Joker? And I'm like, he says the word clown, which I thought was on the nose. I wish he wouldn't have said the word clown, but he's the Joker. Come on, guys. Come on. You're smarter than that. Final thoughts. Did the Riddler win? I guess he kind of did. I mean, he put Gotham underwater in a way, went to jail, but he planned on going to jail. You know, he didn't fully win because he wanted Batman to embrace that and I guess become his partner in crime. That's how disillusioned he was, but, or illusioned? Delusioned. I'm going to keep hitting because, you know, I've been talking for a long time. Overall, the movie got better on second watch. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just think it's it's such an artistic take on a character that, you know, we're getting so many of these, like, studio movies. Now, some of them I absolutely love, and some of them are cram-packed full of things that appeal to me. Again, I'm a huge comic book fan, but this is a wonderfully artistic movie that is paced in a way that I want to see and I wanted to see for quite some time. And it's a Batman detective mystery movie with thrills and chills and just enough action to keep me wanting more. So I, for one, really loved this film. Did my score go up? Go check out my second review on Letterboxd to find out. But thank you guys so much for being here. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or TikTok or all of those things, I'm always talking Batman. This is not it for me. We got to rank the Batman movies. I'm ranking 50 of them. Not just the live-action movies, all 50 Batman films that I could find. I'll see you soon.